The clock in the small guest house room showed midnight when Armin's phone suddenly began to ring. He was half asleep after a long day of work in another city. At first, he thought it might be a wrong number, but when the ringing continued, he sighed and sat up in bed. His eyes were heavy, his body tired, yet something inside told him he should answer. "Hello? Who is this?" Armin asked in a low voice, still half in his dreams. On the other side, a sharp and commanding voice replied, "This is Karen from the HOA. You need to come right now and give the keys to your property." Armin blinked in surprise. For a moment, he thought he was still dreaming. "I'm sorry, what? Did you just say now? It's midnight." Karen didn't lower her tone. "Yes, I said now. Your tenant is standing outside, and according to HOA rules, the keys must be handed over personally by you. I don't care if it's late, you must drive here immediately." Armin rubbed his forehead in disbelief. He was not even in the same city. His property was 5 hours away, and he had traveled for work. He had locked the house carefully before leaving and informed his tenant, Aliyah, that she could move in as soon as she arrived. He had also arranged a spare key with his friend Rashid, just in case. Everything was supposed to be smooth. But this sudden demand at midnight was something he could not understand. "Ma'am," Armin said calmly, "I am not in town. I can't just get in a car and drive 5 hours in the middle of the night. There is no emergency here. The house is ready, and the tenant has full permission." But Karen's voice grew louder. "That is not acceptable. Rules are rules. You must follow them. If you don't, you will face consequences." Armin felt a wave of frustration inside him. He had always tried to be respectful and follow every guideline. He paid fees on time, kept his property in good condition, and never caused trouble. But tonight, he was being treated like he had done something wrong. He tried to reason with her. "Listen, the house is safe. The tenant has been waiting for this moment for weeks. Why create problems now? Please, allow her to enter. I will personally meet you when I return tomorrow." Karen only repeated, "That is not my problem. You must come here right now." Armin sat back on the bed, staring at the wall. He could not believe this was happening. The sound of her voice still echoed in his ears, filled with strictness and no kindness. After the call ended, Armin's heart felt heavy. He thought about Aliyah, his tenant. She was a young woman who had been searching for a place of her own. She had told him how excited she was to finally have a small home where she could feel safe. She had been counting down the days. And now, at midnight, she was standing outside, unable to enter because of a rule that was suddenly being forced upon her. The image of her waiting outside with her luggage in the dark street filled his heart with sadness. He wanted to protect her from this stress, but his hands were tied. He was miles away, with no way to reach quickly. Armin lay back down, but sleep would not come. His mind kept replaying Karen's harsh words. "Rules are rules. You must come." He wondered why some people chose to show power in such cruel ways, without considering the human side of the situation. He picked up his phone again and thought of calling Aliyah, just to check on her. But then he hesitated. What would he say? How could he comfort her when he himself felt powerless? Still, his heart did not allow him to stay silent. He dialed her number. "Armin, bye." Her voice was soft, almost broken. "Aliyah, I'm so sorry. I just spoke to Karen. She's not allowing you in." There was silence for a few seconds before Aliyah answered, "Yes. She said I cannot enter until you come. I tried to explain you're out of town, but she didn't listen. I don't know what to do. I'm standing here with my bags. I feel so lost. Armin closed his eyes tightly. He wished he could drive that very moment. Please don't cry. I'll find a way. You are not alone. Just wait a little longer. I promise I'll fix this. After ending the call, his own eyes grew wet. The guest house room felt colder than before. The ticking of the wall clock sounded louder. The night stretched endlessly, filled with thoughts of responsibility, helplessness, and the unfairness of people who used rules as weapons. Armin whispered to himself, why do such moments come when you least expect them? A single call, and suddenly everything changes. That night, he understood that this was not going to be just a small problem. It was the beginning of a long test of patience, strength, and heart. Armin sat on the edge of his bed in the guest house, staring at his phone. The dim light from the bedside lamp cast a tired shadow across his face. His heart still carried the weight of the midnight call, and his mind refused to rest. He thought again about Karen's harsh words. Rules are rules. You must come. The words echoed like an iron door slamming shut. He leaned back against the wall and took a deep breath, trying to calm himself. But his phone buzzed again. A new message appeared, if you don't come by morning, we will take strict action. Armin's chest tightened. He read the line again and again, as if the message itself was trying to choke his peace. He wondered, what kind of action? What could they even do? But one thought hurt him more than the threat: the picture of Aaliyah standing outside with her luggage, waiting, tired, and helpless. She had trusted him. She had believed his words when he told her the house would be ready for her. She had told him about her struggles, how she had shifted from place to place, and how much this new start meant to her. And now, because of this unnecessary rule being pushed at the worst possible time, she was being kept outside her own home. Armin's phone rang again. This time it was Aaliyah. Armin by, her voice was weak, trembling. Yes, Aaliyah, I'm here. Tell me. I don't know what to do. Karen is saying she can't allow me inside. She told me to wait, but it's so late. The street is empty. I feel scared standing here alone. I don't understand why this is happening. Armin pressed his hand against his forehead. His heart broke with every word. I'm so sorry, Aaliyah. You trusted me, and now you are suffering. Please, just hold on a little longer. I will find a way. I promise. Aaliyah didn't say anything for a moment. Then, softly, she replied, I just wanted a place to call home. I don't want to cause problems for anyone. I only want to rest after this long journey. Her words pierced his heart. He imagined her sitting on her suitcase by the gate, her eyes heavy with exhaustion, her hands folded around herself for comfort. After the call ended, Armin could no longer sit still. He stood up and paced across the small room. His steps were restless, his mind racing. He thought about driving back, but he knew it was dangerous. The road was long, dark, and unsafe at night. If something happened on the way, it would only make things worse. He sat back down, trying to think clearly. His eyes fell on his contacts list. That was when he remembered his old friend Rashid, who lived near the property. Rashid had always been supportive, someone who never hesitated to help. Armin felt a small ray of hope. But before he could call Rashid, his phone buzzed again. Another message from Karen: this is your last warning. If you do not come, you will regret it. Armin shook his head in disbelief. He had never seen such stubbornness. The HOA was meant to manage things fairly, not to torture people with rules that made no sense. He whispered to himself, why is she doing this? What satisfaction does she get from hurting others? The pressure was rising. He could feel it in his chest, in his breathing, in the way his hands trembled as he held the phone. He wanted to shout, but he forced himself to stay calm. He had always believed that patience was stronger than anger, even in the most difficult moments. Still, his heart ached for Aaliyah. He remembered their first meeting when she came to see the house. She had walked through each room with a soft smile, imagining how she would set her small furniture, how she would make a corner for her books, how she would finally rest after years of moving. She had even told him, this place feels like peace. It feels like I belong here. And now, instead of peace, she was facing rejection at the very door that was supposed to welcome her. Armin closed his eyes and prayed silently. He prayed for strength, for patience, and for a solution. He knew that sometimes problems came not to break a person but to test their spirit. But still, he wondered why the test had to come at such a painful moment. The night grew heavier. Outside the window of his guest house, the world was quiet, but inside his heart, a storm was raging. He thought about his responsibilities not just as a landlord but as a human being who had promised someone safety and trust. He looked at his phone one more time. This time, instead of waiting for another harsh message, he dialed Rashid's number. The call rang, and with each ring, Armin hoped his friend would answer and bring light to this dark night. Armin held his phone tightly, waiting as Rashid's number rang. His heart beat faster with every passing second. Finally, the call connected, and a familiar warm voice answered. Armin, is everything all right? Why are you calling this late? Rashid asked, his tone filled with concern. Armin took a deep breath. Brother, I'm in trouble. It's about my tenant, Aaliyah. She's standing outside the house right now, and the HOA head, Karen, is not letting her enter. She's saying the keys must be given only by me, in person. But you know I'm 5 hours away. There was silence for a moment, then Rashid spoke firmly. This is not fair. At this time of night? How can she treat people like this? Don't worry, Armin. Tell me where Aaliyah is exactly. I'll go to her right away. Armin felt a little weight lift from his chest. He quickly gave him the details and thanked him again and again. Please take care of her until I return. She has no one else there. After ending the call, Armin sat on the bed, feeling a little calmer. Still, his thoughts remained restless. He knew Rashid would help, but the pain of not being there himself continued to eat at him. Meanwhile, outside the house, Aaliyah sat on her small suitcase near the gate. The street was quiet, with only a few dim lights from distant poles. Every sound of the night made her nervous: the barking of a stray dog, the rustling of leaves, the sound of a motorbike passing quickly. Her eyes were tired, but tears kept flowing. She had dreamed of this moment for so long, moving into her own home, starting fresh. But instead, she found herself sitting outside, feeling rejected. She whispered to herself, why does this always happen to me? Why can't life be simple, just once? Her heart felt heavy with loneliness. She thought of her journey, the effort it took to save money, the hope she carried every day. Now, sitting in the dark, that hope felt like it was slipping away. Just then, her phone rang. It was Armin. She quickly answered, wiping her tears. Aliyah, please hold on. I just spoke to my friend Rashid. He's on his way. He'll reach you soon. You won't be alone anymore. Aliyah tried to smile, though her voice still shook. Thank you, Arman Bhai. I was feeling so helpless. I didn't know where to go. Arman's heart ached at her words. He wanted to be there himself, but all he could do was offer comfort through the phone. I know this is difficult, but you are strong. Please trust me. You'll be inside your home soon. After the call, Aliyah sat quietly, hugging her bag. The night felt endless, but the thought of someone coming gave her a little strength. A short while later, Rashid's car stopped near the house. Aliyah stood up quickly, wiping her face. A kind man in his 50s stepped out, carrying a warm expression. You must be Aliyah, Rashid said gently. I'm Rashid, Arman's friend. Don't worry, you're safe now. At his words, Aliyah's tears returned, but this time they carried relief. She nodded and whispered, thank you. Rashid looked at the locked gate and shook his head in disapproval. This is unnecessary. Keeping a young woman outside at midnight is not just unfair, it's cruel. Come, let's wait together. I have a spare key from Arman, but I need to speak to Karen first. Aliyah followed him to his car, where she finally sat down, feeling a little less afraid. Rashid offered her some water and spoke kindly, as if she were his own daughter. His presence gave her the comfort she had been longing for. Back in the guest house, Arman's phone buzzed again. This time, it was Aliyah's message. Rashid uncle is here. I feel safer now. Thank you for not giving up on me. Arman closed his eyes, relief washing over him. For the first time that night, he smiled. The storm inside his heart grew calmer, though he knew the battle was not over. Karen would not stop so easily. Still, he whispered to himself, at least she's not alone anymore. At least she has someone by her side. The night continued, but now there was hope, a hope born not from rules or authority, but from kindness and human connection. Arman lay back on the small guest house bed, but sleep refused to come. The dim light of the clock showed 2 a.m., and still his eyes were wide open. His mind felt like a storm, every thought crashing against another, refusing to rest. The midnight call from Karen had already shaken him, but what kept him awake now was the image of Aliyah. He imagined her sitting outside in the cold, hugging her small bag, her eyes filled with tears. Even though Rashid had reached her, the memory of her helpless voice still echoed in his ears. His phone buzzed again. This time it was not a call, but a series of short text messages from Karen. You are breaking the rules. This is unacceptable. If you don't come, I will report you to the committee. Arman read each line with growing frustration. It felt as if Karen was enjoying her power, sending messages at night without caring about anyone's peace. He dropped the phone on the bed and rubbed his face with both hands. He whispered softly, why do some people use rules as weapons instead of guidance? He stood up and walked to the small window of the guest house. Outside, the road was empty, only a few street lights glowing in silence. The world was calm, yet his heart carried chaos. Arman thought about his journey so far. He had always tried to live a life of honesty and kindness. He paid his HOA fees on time, he respected neighbors, and he made sure his property was well maintained. He had never once broken a rule knowingly. Yet tonight, he was being treated as though he had done something wrong. He remembered the day Aliyah came to see the house. She had walked slowly through each room, touching the walls, looking at the windows, and smiling softly. She had told him, "This feels like a place where I can finally breathe. I've never had a home that felt truly mine." Those words had stayed with him. He wanted to make sure she would find peace in that house. Now, instead of peace, she was being blocked by unnecessary demands. The thought made Armin's chest heavy. He sat back down and tried to close his eyes, but his phone buzzed again. Another message from Karen. "Don't think you can escape. You will face consequences in the morning." Armin sighed deeply. His patience was being tested beyond limit. Yet he reminded himself, anger won't solve this. Calmness is the only answer. Still, his heart was restless. He picked up the phone and opened the message thread with Aliyah. He read her last words again, "Rashid uncle is here. I feel safer now. Thank you for not giving up on me." Those words brought a little comfort. At least she was no longer alone. At least she had someone by her side. Armin lay back down, staring at the ceiling. His mind traveled back to his own childhood. He remembered nights when his family struggled, when they had to move from one rented place to another. He remembered his mother whispering, "One day, we'll have a house where no one can throw us out." Perhaps that was why he cared so much about Aliyah's situation. He knew the pain of uncertainty, of not having a safe space to rest. He did not want anyone else to feel that way, especially not someone who trusted him. Hours passed slowly. The ticking of the clock felt louder in the silence. Every minute stretched long, filled with worry and frustration. At around 3:30 a.m., Armin sat up again. He picked up his phone and dialed Karen's number, unable to hold back anymore. When she answered, her voice was sharp, even at that hour. "Why are you calling?" she demanded. Armin tried to keep his tone calm, though his voice shook with emotion. "Because this is not fair. It's the middle of the night, and you're forcing a tenant to suffer for no reason. I can't drive 5 hours right now. I will return tomorrow morning. Please, let her stay. She has permission from me. She has every right to enter the house." Karen replied coldly, "Rules are rules. If you don't come, I will report you." Armin closed his eyes, holding back the anger rising inside. He spoke softly but firmly, "Rules exist to protect people, not to hurt them. You may have authority, but authority without kindness is cruelty. Please think about that." But Karen did not reply kindly. She simply ended the call. Armin stared at the dark screen of his phone, his hands trembling. He felt both helpless and strong at the same time, helpless because he couldn't physically be there, but strong because he had spoken the truth. The rest of the night passed slowly. He didn't sleep, only sat in silence, thinking. He thought about Aliyah, about Rashid, about Karen, and about the tests life gives without warning. By the time the first light of dawn touched the sky, Armin whispered to himself, "The night is long, but the morning always comes. I just need to hold on a little longer." The night had been long and heavy for Armin. By the time the first rays of morning touched the small window of his guest house room, his eyes were red and tired. He had not slept at all. His body was weak, but his mind still carried the weight of Karen's harsh words. He sat on the edge of the bed, holding his phone, waiting for a message from Rashid or Aliyah. Finally, at 6 a.m., his phone buzzed. It was a short message from Rashid, "Don't worry. Aliyah is safe. I stayed near the house. I'll deal with Karen in the morning." Armin read those words and felt a little comfort, but he also knew the matter was not over. Karen would not stop. She had made it clear that she wanted to push her authority, no matter how unreasonable it seemed. As the day began, Armin decided he could not remain silent anymore. He picked up the phone and called Karen. "Karen, I need to speak with you seriously," he began, trying to keep his tone calm. Her voice came sharp as usual. "What is it now? Have you finally decided to drive here?" Armin closed his eyes and took a deep breath before answering. "Listen carefully. I respect the HOA and I respect the rules. But last night was not about rules. It was about making someone suffer for no reason. You left a young woman outside her own home in the middle of the night. Do you realize how unsafe and unkind that was?" Karen replied coldly, "That is not my concern. If she could not enter, that is your fault. You should have been here. Don't blame me." Armin's hand tightened around the phone. His heart beat fast, and for a moment, he felt anger rising inside. But he reminded himself that shouting would only make things worse. He spoke slowly, but firmly. "I am 5 hours away. It was impossible for me to come at midnight. I had already given full permission to Aliyah. I even arranged a spare key with Rashid. There was no reason to keep her waiting. You call yourself the guardian of rules, but rules without humanity are empty." Karen raised her voice. "Enough. If you continue to argue, I will report you to the committee. You'll face fines and strict action." That was the breaking point for Armin. He had been patient all night, swallowing his frustration, holding back his words. But now he could no longer remain silent. "Karen," he said in a steady voice, "I am not afraid of your threats. I know the difference between rules and misuse of power. You may succeed in writing complaints, but you have already lost respect. Authority is nothing if it lacks kindness. Remember, houses are not just walls and roofs. They are homes, and homes are meant to give peace. Last night, you took that peace away." For a few seconds, there was silence on the line. Then Karen simply hung up. Armin placed the phone on the table, his hands trembling. His chest felt heavy, but also lighter at the same time. He had finally spoken his heart. Meanwhile, back at the property, Rashid was already preparing to meet Karen face to face. Aliyah, though still shaken from the night, felt stronger knowing she was not alone. She sat quietly in the living room of Rashid's home, sipping tea, while Rashid promised her, "Don't worry, Beta. Today this will end. I will stand with you." Armin received another message later in the morning. This time it was from Aliyah. "Rashid uncle is with me. He says we will talk to Karen together. I feel less afraid now. Thank you for believing in me." Reading her words, Armin felt tears in his eyes. He whispered to himself, "Sometimes, standing for what is right is harder than anything else. But it is worth it." Throughout the morning, Armin kept checking his phone. He wanted updates, but at the same time, he trusted Rashid. His heart was still restless, yet he felt a strange strength growing inside him. By noon, Rashid finally called. His voice was calm but firm. "Armin, I spoke to Karen. She was angry at first, but I reminded her of the real rules, not the ones she was making up. I told her she had no right to keep Aliyah outside. I showed her the written permission you gave. In the end, she could not argue much. She left quietly." Armin let out a deep breath of relief. His shoulders relaxed, and for the first time in 2 days, he felt hope. "Thank you, Rashid. Bye. I don't know what I would have done without you. Rashid replied warmly, this is what friends are for. And don't worry about Karen. People like her may shout, but the truth always stands taller. After the call, Armin sat by the window, looking at the bright afternoon sky. The storm of the night had finally begun to fade. He knew there would still be challenges ahead, but in his heart, he also knew he had not faced them alone. The breaking point had come not to destroy him, but to show him his strength. The morning sunlight poured gently through the guest house window, yet Armin's mind was still busy with thoughts. After the long night, the tension in his chest began to ease slightly, but worry for Aliyah lingered. He had spent the entire night imagining her sitting outside with her small suitcase, tired and scared. Then, a message popped up on his phone. It was from Aliyah. Rashid uncle came. He gave me the spare keys. I'm finally inside the house. Thank you for not giving up on me. Armin's heart leapt, and for the first time in many hours, he allowed himself to smile. Relief washed over him like sunlight breaking through a stormy sky. He closed his eyes and whispered, she's safe. That's what matters. He immediately called Rashid to thank him personally. Rashid's cheerful voice brought comfort to Armin's exhausted spirit. Armin bye, Rashid said warmly, don't worry. Aliyah is fine. I stayed with her until she felt safe, and I spoke to Karen about the rules. She's upset, but she can no longer block anyone unfairly. Everything is under control. Armin nodded, even though Rashid could not see him. I don't know how to thank you enough. You saved her from a terrible night. And you reminded me that help comes in unexpected ways. Rashid laughed softly. Sometimes, that's all we need, a friend who doesn't hesitate to step in. Don't worry about Karen. Her power is loud, but kindness is stronger. After the call ended, Armin took a deep breath. The long night of anxiety and sleepless hours had finally led to hope. He realized that even when situations seemed unfair, patience and support could turn everything around. Meanwhile, Aliyah was inside her new home, slowly exploring the small rooms she had dreamed of. She opened her suitcase and began arranging her clothes, taking care to place each item neatly. The house felt warm, not just because of the sunlight streaming through the windows, but because for the first time, she felt safe. She had finally stepped into a home that was truly hers, and she couldn't stop smiling. Rashid sat with her, drinking tea and chatting lightly to make her feel comfortable. You see, rules are made to guide, not to frighten. You have nothing to worry about now, he said. Aliyah nodded, her eyes still glistening with the memory of the night. I was so scared. I thought no one would help me. But thanks to Armin Bhai and you, I feel safe now. This place feels like a real home. Back in his guest house, Armin felt a quiet joy. The storm of the previous night had ended, and now he could breathe more freely. He realized that challenges sometimes come not to punish, but to show who truly cares. He sat at the small table by the window, thinking about the lessons the night had taught him. He thought about patience, kindness, and the strength of friends who act without hesitation. He thought about Aliyah, who had waited calmly despite fear, trusting him and Rashid. And he thought about himself, who had learned that even in the face of unreasonable people, one could still choose to act with calm and purpose. Later that morning, he received another message from Aliyah. I arranged the furniture the way I wanted. It finally feels like my home. Thank you for everything, Armin Bhai. I will never forget your kindness. Armin smiled softly, feeling a warmth in his heart that no exhaustion could touch. I'm glad you're happy, Aliyah. That is all that matters. For the first time in hours, he allowed himself to relax. He stood by the window, looking at the bright sky and thinking about the days ahead. He knew there would still be small challenges, but this experience had taught him the importance of courage, patience, and support. By noon, he made one more call to Rashid, not with worry, but with gratitude. "Thank you again for being there. I feel so relieved knowing Aliyah is safe." Rashid chuckled. "No need to thank me. Friends are meant to help each other. And remember, Arman, the loudest voices do not always win. The quiet strength of kindness always lasts longer." Arman repeated those words in his mind, feeling a deep sense of peace. He realized that the long, tense night was over. The problem that had seemed so overwhelming now felt like a lesson learned. He understood that life sometimes tests patience and character, but even the hardest nights can lead to brighter mornings. He finally sat back in his chair, feeling calmer and lighter. Aliyah was safe, the house was in order, and his heart, which had been so heavy the previous night, was finally at ease. He whispered softly to himself, "The night was long, but hope always finds a way." And now, peace has returned. Days had passed since the tense midnight incident, and the property finally felt calm. Arman's long journey back home was filled with anticipation. The road stretched endlessly, but his heart carried a lightness that had been missing during the stressful night. For the first time in days, he felt hope instead of worry. As he drove, he thought about Aliyah and the difficult night she had endured. He imagined her standing outside, tired and scared, waiting for someone to help. But thanks to Rashid, she had found safety. Now, she was inside her home, arranging her things, and perhaps even smiling. That thought made Arman's chest feel warm. By afternoon, he finally reached his property. The familiar sight of the gate and walls brought a sense of relief. He parked the car and took a deep breath before stepping out. The sun was shining brightly, giving the house a welcoming glow. It felt almost symbolic after all the darkness of the night. Light had returned. Aliyah was on the porch, organizing a few boxes of her belongings. She looked up when she saw him and smiled warmly. "Arman bhai," she called softly, her voice filled with gratitude. Arman smiled back, walking towards her. "Hello, Aliyah. How are you feeling today?" "I'm happy," she replied simply. "It finally feels like my own home. Thank you for trusting me and for caring so much." Her words made Arman's eyes glisten. He had only done what he felt was right, but hearing her say it aloud filled his heart with joy. "I'm glad you're happy. That's all I wanted." Rashid, who had stayed nearby to make sure everything went smoothly, joined them on the porch. "She's settling in nicely. I told her you were coming back today, so she's been excited to see you." Arman nodded, grateful for his friend's constant support. "I can't thank you enough, Rashid bhai. You were there when I couldn't be. You turned a difficult night into a peaceful morning." Rashid smiled. "Sometimes, that's what friends are for. We step in when it matters most." As the day went on, Arman helped Aliyah organize her small home. They arranged furniture, unpacked boxes, and shared light conversation. The atmosphere was filled with laughter and comfort, a sharp contrast to the tension of the previous night. Every little detail, placing a small rug, adjusting the curtains, or arranging the kitchen, made the house feel alive and welcoming. At one point, Aliyah paused and looked at Arman. "I was so scared the night you weren't here. I didn't know what to do when Karen wouldn't let me in. But I realized something. I realized that even in fear, people who care will find a way to help. Armin smiled softly. That's true. Sometimes, life tests us to see how strong we are, or how much we care. You stayed calm, even when it was difficult, and that helped Rashid and me to help you. Aliyah nodded. I also learned that people with power aren't always right. But people who care, even quietly, can make a huge difference. Armin's heart swelled with pride. The experience had been challenging, but it had taught them both valuable lessons about patience, kindness, and courage. Later in the afternoon, Armin stepped back to look at the house. For the first time in a long while, everything felt right. The house was not just walls and furniture, it was now a home filled with care, respect, and hope. He whispered to himself, sometimes, people may try to make life harder, but kindness and patience always win. The loudest voices aren't always the strongest. Quiet strength lasts longer. Aliyah joined him on the porch, holding a small cup of tea. She handed it to him with a gentle smile. For you, Armin Bhai. Thank you again for everything. I will always remember your kindness. Armin accepted the tea, feeling a deep sense of peace. You don't need to thank me. Just enjoy your home, and remember that no matter what, there are people who care for you. As the sun began to set, painting the sky in shades of gold and orange, Armin looked around the property. Everything felt calm, safe, and hopeful. The long, tense night had passed, but the lessons remained. He knew that life would always present challenges, but with patience, understanding, and support, any problem could be overcome. He turned to Aliyah and Rashid, smiling warmly. Today is a reminder. We can't control everything in life, but we can choose how to respond. We can choose kindness, patience, and courage. Aliyah nodded, her eyes shining with gratitude. I understand, Armin Bhai. And I will remember this forever. As evening settled over the house, Armin felt a quiet joy that came not just from resolving the problem, but from knowing that his actions had made a real difference. The night that had once felt so long and hopeless was now a distant memory. And in that peaceful home, filled with warmth, light, and laughter, Armin realized the truth: even in the darkest times, hope and kindness can shine the brightest.